The most powerful people in any room rarely speak first. They don't interrupt. They don't perform. Yet everyone listens when they do speak. This isn't luck. This isn't charisma in the traditional sense. Behind every truly confident person is a hidden code, a specific set of behaviors, thoughts, and choices that make them magnetic without effort. Most people chase visibility, validation, and noise. The most successful people chase depth. Today, we decode the exact system that separates those who command respect from those who demand it. By the end of this audiobook, you will understand why silence can be louder than any word you've ever spoken. And you will know exactly how to become the person whose presence shifts the energy of any room. This is the Quiet Confidence Code. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Stop proving and start existing. You're about to learn something that will reshape every relationship you have, every conversation you enter, and every opportunity that comes your way. Most people are trapped in a cage they built themselves. They're constantly performing, constantly proving, constantly broadcasting their value like a broken radio that can't turn off. And they have no idea why nothing is working. Let me be direct with you. If you're still trying to prove your worth to other people, you've already lost. You've handed over your power. You've made your peace dependent on their approval. And approval never comes. It can't. Because the approval you're chasing isn't about you. It's about their insecurity. Here's the trap most people fall into. They believe that if they just work hard enough, say the right thing, show up at the right moment, and perform well enough, then finally, someone will see them. Someone will validate them. Someone will permit them to feel okay about themselves. This is the proof trap. And it's destroying your presence. Think about the last important meeting you were in. Think about the person who got the attention, the credit, the opportunity. I'm going to make a guess. It wasn't the person talking the most. It wasn't the person over-explaining their ideas. It wasn't the person desperate to be heard. It was the person who said less and meant more. You have a choice right now. You can keep performing. You can keep over-delivering on things nobody asked for. You can keep justifying your existence to people who don't owe you their judgment anyway. Or you can stop. That's the key. You stop performing. A sales professional closes $1 million deal. They don't talk through the entire negotiation. They listen. They ask 1 or 2 precise questions. They let the other person fill the silence. And they wait. They don't rush. They don't convince. They present. They allow. And somehow, the deal closes. Why? Because their restraint signals mastery. Their silence signals control. Their refusal to perform signals strength. Compare that to someone else in sales who talks constantly. Who justifies every price? Who oversells? Who performs? Who exhausts themselves? By the time the negotiation ends, they're depleted. Their voice has lost its weight. And they wonder why they didn't close the deal. This is the energy cost of performance. Every word you speak that isn't essential is a battery drain. Every explanation is a leak. Every justification is a sign that you've already decided you're not enough. The quiet, confident person doesn't run on overdraft. They conserve their words like a precious resource. Think of confidence as a battery. Most people wake up at half charge and spend the entire day transmitting, explaining, proving, and by noon, they're empty. They've got nothing left. The quiet, confident person wakes up full. They spend the day conserving. They only transmit when it matters. And when they do speak, they have full power behind it. You don't earn confidence. You stop earning doubt. That's the shift. That's the entire transformation we're talking about. You stop broadcasting your value, and you start quietly knowing it. You stop measuring yourself against everyone else, and you start measuring yourself against who you were yesterday. You stop needing the room to see you, and you start being the person who sees clearly. This isn't arrogance. An arrogant person is still seeking attention. They just reversed the direction. An arrogant person still cares what you think. A truly confident person doesn't. They've decided they're enough. Not better than you. Enough. That's the shift from proving to being. A CEO doesn't need to announce their authority. A mentor doesn't need to remind you of their experience. A partner doesn't need to defend their love. They simply are. And that presence is unshakable. Stop performing. Start becoming. This is where quiet confidence begins. You've just mastered the foundational principle. You understand now that you don't need external validation. You understand that your words carry more weight when you speak less. Now we need to address something deeper. We need to talk about where you're still unknowingly seeking approval. We need to reveal the exact cost of validation. Chapter 2: The Silent Cost of Seeking Validation. Every time you post something online, you're waiting for the likes. Every time you share an accomplishment, you're listening for the applause. Every time you make a choice, you're scanning for approval. And you're bleeding yourself dry in the process. This is the validation trap. And most people don't even realize they're in it. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you did something purely for yourself? Not for Instagram. Not for your boss. Not for your partner. Not for your family. Just for you. Can you remember? If you have to think that hard, you're spending your life seeking validation from people who didn't ask to be your judge. Here's what happens when you're addicted to approval. Your nervous system gets trained to scan for other people's reactions instead of listening to your own inner compass. You make decisions based on what might get you noticed instead of what's actually right for you. You say yes to things you should say no to. You stay silent when you should speak. You perform when you should rest. And nobody wins. You're exhausted. The people around you are confused. And you still don't feel seen. You have a choice. You can keep chasing this. Or you can understand something crucial. The opinion you're chasing is the freedom you're losing. Think about this carefully. Every moment you spend wondering what someone thinks about your choice is a moment you're not trusting your own judgment. Every second you're waiting for approval is a second you're not moving forward. Every ounce of energy you spend on external validation is energy you're stealing from your actual life. I'm going to tell you something that's going to feel uncomfortable. Right now, today, there are people in your life whose approval you're still seeking. You might not admit it. You might not even consciously realize it. But you are. Your partner's approval of your appearance. Your boss's approval of your work. Your parents' approval of your life choices. Your friends' approval of how you spend your time. And most damaging of all, the approval of strangers online. This is the validation audit. And if you're honest with yourself, you'll find it everywhere. The quiet, confident person did this audit long ago. They made a decision. They decided that their actions are for them, not for others. Not for show. Not for measurement. Not for external validation. For them. Here's what's interesting. Once they made that decision, something shifted. They actually started getting more recognition, more respect, more opportunities. Why? Because they stopped chasing it. Because they became genuinely good at what they do instead of performing goodness. Because people respect what they cannot influence. An employee works hard because they believe the work matters. Not because they're hoping for a pat on the back. That employee gets promoted faster. Gets more opportunities. Gets more respect. Why? Because everyone can feel the difference between someone seeking approval and someone seeking excellence. A friend stops texting back immediately. Not because they're cold. Because they're busy living. That friend becomes the person everyone wants to be close to. Why? Because they have a life. They're not available to be your emotional support animal. They're available as a friend. And friendship is better when both people have full lives. You can't be approved and authentic at the same time. That's the key. The moment you're performing for approval, you've abandoned authenticity. You've abandoned yourself. And nobody can approve of a version of you that doesn't actually exist. The quiet, confident person stopped needing permission years ago. They stopped waiting for external validation. They started trusting their own internal compass. And from that place, everything changed. Here's what I want you to do right now. Identify one area of your life where you're still seeking validation. One place. Your social media. your career, your relationship, your family dynamic. Pick one and make the decision that you're going to stop. You're going to make the choice for yourself. And you're going to move forward without checking if anyone approves. That single decision, repeated over and over, is how quiet confidence is built. Needing nothing is the most powerful position you can occupy. Remember that. And as you begin to let go of the need for approval, something else emerges. Something that changes everything. The way you speak. The way you show up. The words you choose. The silence you embrace. Chapter 3. The Language of Quiet Confidence. The way you speak either broadcasts insecurity or strength. There is no middle ground. And most people have no idea which one they're doing. Right now, I want you to imagine two people in a boardroom. The same meeting. The same stakes. One person is speaking. Listen to the language. Well, I kind of think that maybe we could possibly consider, if you want to, trying the approach where we sort of shift the strategy in a way that might work. I'm not totally sure, but I think it could help. What do you guys think? Their words are weak because they're not standing behind them. Now listen to the quiet, confident person in the same meeting. Here's the approach I recommend. Here's why it works. Here's the timeline. Here are the results we can expect. What questions do you have? One person sounds uncertain. The other sounds decisive. One person is asking for permission. The other is taking responsibility. And the room responds accordingly. Your words are only as strong as your conviction behind them. That's the key. It's not about being arrogant or aggressive. It's about speaking with actual certainty. Most people have no idea how much weakness they're broadcasting through their language patterns. They qualify every statement. They apologize preemptively. They soften their assertions. They ask permission when they should be making declarations. And they do it so automatically, they don't even notice. The quiet, confident person has cleaned up their language. They've eliminated the filler. They've removed the qualifiers. They speak to communicate, not to perform. They speak to move forward, not to get approval. But there's something even more powerful than the words you say. It's the words you don't say. And it's the space between them. The pause is where power lives. Watch someone who's nervous in a conversation. They rush. They fill every silence. The moment someone stops talking, they jump in. Why? Because silence makes them uncomfortable. Silence feels like rejection. Silence feels like failure. So they fill it. And in filling it, they reveal their anxiety. The quiet, confident person does the opposite. They pause after they speak. They let their words land. They don't rush to fill the silence. They let the other person feel the weight of what they just said. And something interesting happens. The pause becomes powerful. The silence becomes meaningful. The other person leans in. Think about the most impactful conversations you've had. I bet the other person wasn't talking the whole time. I bet they said something, paused, and let you think about it. That pause is where they demonstrated control. That pause is where they showed mastery. In an interview, someone asks you a difficult question. The nervous candidate rushes. They fill every second of silence with words. They ramble. They contradict themselves. The quiet, confident candidate does something different. They pause. They think. They answer. Then they pause again. And in that pause, the interviewer thinks the candidate is thoughtful, considered, in control. But the most important part of quiet confidence isn't what you say or when you pause. It's what you decide not to say at all. Silence isn't emptiness. It's discipline. The quiet, confident person doesn't gossip. They listen while others do, but they don't participate. They don't complain. They acknowledge problems and move to solutions. They don't explain themselves. They state their position and let it stand. They don't defend their choices. They own them and move forward. They don't brag. They let their results speak. What you eliminate from your speech is just as important as what you include. Two people experience the same rejection. The same setback. The same disappointment. One person spends weeks telling everyone what happened, defending themselves, explaining why it wasn't their fault, venting, spiraling. The other person processes it, learns from it, and moves forward in silence. A year later, the quiet person has built something new. The vocal person is still explaining. This is the power of omission. This is how quiet confidence speaks even in silence. Your language has been trained by a lifetime of seeking validation, by a need to explain, by a desire to be understood, by a fear that if you don't clarify, you'll be misunderstood or rejected. That training is reversible. You can retrain your speech. You can learn to speak with conviction. You can master the pause. You can eliminate the unnecessary. And once you do, the way people respond to you will shift immediately. Not because you became more likable, but because you became more credible. Now that you understand how to speak with power, we need to talk about something even more foundational. We need to talk about the physical presence that precedes every word you say. We need to talk about the one thing people notice before you ever open your mouth. Chapter 4: The Physics of Presence. A person walks into a room. They haven't said a single word, but within seconds, you can sense whether they're confident or anxious, whether they're grounded or scattered, whether they're present or absent. You can feel it. This is physics. This is not psychology. This is the actual physical reality of presence. The quiet, confident person has mastered their physicality, and it changes everything. Let me paint you a picture. Someone walks into a meeting room. They're fidgeting, adjusting their clothes, shifting their weight, looking around, unable to sit still. Their eyes are searching. Their breathing is shallow. Their shoulders are raised. What do you sense? Anxiety, desperation, insecurity. They haven't spoken yet, but the room already knows they're uncertain. Now someone else walks in. They're still, grounded. Their posture is open but solid. Not rigid, not collapsed, but actually settled. Their breathing is deep and visible. You can see their chest expand and contract with intention. Their eyes are present. They're not searching. They're observing. What do you sense? Control, certainty, authority. And they still haven't spoken. Your body speaks louder than your mouth. That's the key. This is where most people waste their time. They work on their words, their tone, their message. But they ignore the physical foundation that determines whether anyone will actually listen. Quiet confidence has a signature. It's in your posture. It's in your breath. It's in your stillness. It's in the way you hold space. The quietest, most confident people I've ever observed share something in common. They breathe differently. You can see it. Their breathing is slow, deep, intentional. It's not the shallow, rapid breathing of someone in a sympathetic state. It's not the breathing of fight or flight. It's the breathing of someone who has decided they're safe. They're in control. They're present. This is neurology, not mysticism. When you slow your breathing, you activate your parasympathetic nervous system. That's the system of calm. That's the system of coherence. That's the system where confidence lives. And when you're in that system, your entire physical presence changes. Control your breath. Control the room. That's not metaphorical. That's literal. Think about the moments when you felt truly confident. An athlete before a big performance. A surgeon before an operation. An executive before a presentation. What did they do before it started? They controlled their breath. They slowed everything down. They centered themselves in their body. And then they showed up differently. More capable. More present. More powerful. But here's what most people miss. That control isn't something they accessed in the moment. It was built through repetition. Through practice. Through small choices that trained their nervous system to remain settled even when the stakes were high. The quiet, confident person has trained their body. Not for appearance. For actual internal regulation. Now, stillness. This is the most underrated aspect of presence in a world obsessed with motion and activity. In a world of constant movement, constant distraction, and constant urgency, stillness is shocking. A nervous person moves a lot. They pace. They gesture excessively. They fidget. They need the movement to process, to think, to stay engaged. But the cost is clear. The movement broadcasts nervousness. It signals that something is unstable. The quiet, confident person can sit still for an hour and be fully present. They don't need to move to feel alive. They don't need activity to feel engaged. They can occupy space with intention without feeling the need to fill it with motion. This stillness communicates something specific. It communicates security. You're not running from anything. You're not anxious about anything. You're not looking for an escape route. You're not restless. You're here. You're present. You're settled. Compare a nervous presenter who paces and gestures constantly with a quiet, confident presenter who stands still and delivers with precision. Who impacts the room more? The still one. Why? Because their stillness signals mastery. Movement is nervous. Stillness is the master. Your body is communicating right now. Before you ever say a word, your posture is speaking. Your breath is speaking. Your stillness or restlessness is speaking. The question is, what are you telling people? Start here. Tomorrow morning, notice your breath. Notice your posture. Notice your stillness. Notice your fidgeting. That's the raw material you're working with. You can retrain all of it. Your body can learn quiet confidence just like it learned anxiety. It just takes conscious practice. You've mastered your physicality. You've learned to ground yourself. You've learned to breathe with intention. You've learned to occupy space with presence. But now we need to talk about the decisions you're making. We need to talk about the explanation you're giving. We need to talk about what happens when you stop justifying everything. Chapter 5. Stop explaining and start deciding. Every time you explain your decision, you're signaling doubt. You're asking for permission. You're looking for someone to validate what you've already decided. And you're handing them the power to say no. The quiet, confident person makes a decision and moves forward. They don't narrate their choices. They don't ask for consensus. They don't explain why they're doing what they're doing. They simply do it. Let me show you the difference. An employee goes to their boss and says, "I'm going to handle this project this way because I think it's important to approach it from this angle, and I've been thinking about it, and I have some reasons, and I wanted to see what you thought before I moved forward." That person just gave away their authority. They've positioned themselves as subordinate to someone else's judgment. They've made their action conditional on approval. And they've signaled that they're not fully confident in their decision. The quietly confident employee does something different. They go to the boss and say, "Here's the approach I'm taking. I'll update you Friday with results." That's it. One sentence. No explanation. No justification. No seeking approval. Just clarity about direction and accountability for the outcome. Explanation dilutes the decision. That's the key. Here's what happens when you explain. You open a door for negotiation. You invite debate. You suggest that your decision isn't final. You make it seem like you're open to being talked out of it. And the other person, sensing that door is open, walks through it. They question you. They challenge you. They offer alternatives. And suddenly, what was your decision is now a committee discussion. The quiet, confident person doesn't open that door. They don't explain because explanation implies the decision is still negotiable. They state the direction and move forward. And that clarity is actually more respected than any explanation could ever be. Think about the relationships in your life. The people you respect most. The people who command your respect without effort. I bet they're not the people who over-explain everything. I bet they're the people who state their boundaries clearly and don't apologize for them. "I can't come to the event because I'm really tired and stressed, and I need to recover, and honestly, I'm just overwhelmed right now, and I hope you understand." What did that person just do? They gave you reasons to argue with. They invited negotiation. You could say, "But it's important." Or "Just for an hour." Or "People want to see you." You have an opening because they explained. The quiet, confident person says something different. "I won't be there. I'm focusing on personal time right now." That's final. There's no room for negotiation because there's no explanation. There's just clarity about the boundary. And most people respect that more than they respect elaborate justifications. This is the clarity that kills confusion and closes the door on debate. The quiet, confident person isn't rude about their boundaries. They're not hostile. They're just clear. And clarity is kindness. It removes ambiguity. It prevents confusion. It tells the other person exactly where they stand. Now, let's talk about the bigger picture. This isn't just about individual decisions. This is about operating from a CEO mindset, regardless of your actual title. A CEO doesn't explain every decision to every person. They don't ask permission. They don't seek consensus. They decide based on the information they have. They communicate the decision clearly. They assume they're right until proven wrong. And they move forward. If it doesn't work, they adjust. But they don't spend time in explanation and justification. That's the opposite of leadership. You can adopt this mindset right now, in whatever role you occupy. Not arrogance. As clarity. As decisiveness. As the recognition that you have the information you need and the capability to move forward. The parent who sets the rule doesn't negotiate the rule. The friend who has the boundary doesn't defend the boundary. The professional who commits to the vision doesn't second-guess the commitment. They've decided. They've communicated. They've moved forward. Decide as you own it. Because you do. Here's what I want you to do. Right now, identify one area of your life where you're still explaining instead of deciding. One place where you're seeking permission instead of taking action. One area where you're opening doors that should stay closed. And make a different choice. Make the decision. Communicate it clearly. Move forward without explanation. That single act, repeated over and over, is how quiet confidence operates. You've now mastered the external. You understand your words. You understand your presence. You understand your decisions. But we need to talk about something deeper. We need to talk about what happens when you stop trying to be liked. We need to talk about the difference between likability and respect. Chapter 6: The Myth of Likability and the Truth of Respect. You've been sold a lie your entire life. You've been told that the goal is to be liked, to be loved, to be accepted, to be included, to make sure everyone thinks you're a good person. And in chasing that lie, you've sacrificed something infinitely more valuable: your power. The quiet, confident person stopped trying to be liked somewhere along their journey. And once they did, everything changed. Let me ask you something. Would you rather be liked or respected? Because you can't be both. Not in the way that matters. You can be liked and powerless. You can be respected and disliked. And given the choice, most people choose to be liked. That's why they're powerless. Think about the most impactful leaders you know. Are they necessarily liked? No. Are they respected? Absolutely. There's a difference. A massive difference. The boss everyone loves but doesn't follow. They're nice. They're friendly. They want to be everyone's friend. And their team does exactly the minimum because they have no real reason to do more. The work doesn't feel important. The leader doesn't seem to really care. They're too busy being nice. The boss everyone respects but doesn't necessarily socialize with after work. They're clear about expectations. They hold people accountable. They have standards. And their team consistently exceeds those standards. Why? Because they respect the person leading them. They want to earn that respect. They want to prove themselves capable. And they do. One boss gets office parties. The other gets results. Which one is actually successful? Likability is a leash. Respect is freedom. That's the key. Here's what happens when you're addicted to being liked. You can't say no. You can't have standards. You can't maintain boundaries. You can't discipline anyone, including yourself. You can't make hard decisions. You can't ask for what you need. You can't speak truths that might make someone uncomfortable. Because the moment you do any of those things, there's a risk that someone won't like you. So you spend your life bending yourself into shapes to accommodate everyone else's comfort. You perform likability, and the cost is your power. The quiet, confident person made a different choice. They decided that respect was more important than likability. And from that decision, something interesting happened. They became both more respected and, oddly, more genuinely liked by the people who actually mattered. Because authentic people are always more likable than performing people. The moment you stop trying to be liked, you become yourself. And people like the real version of you infinitely more than they like the performance. But this doesn't mean you're cold or hostile. This is important. The quiet, confident person has mastered the balance between warmth and strength. They're kind. They're genuinely interested in other people. They listen. They care. But they're not soft. They maintain boundaries. They have standards. They won't tolerate disrespect. They're willing to lose a relationship rather than compromise their values. They're warm, not weak. A mentor who listens deeply and cares genuinely but doesn't tolerate laziness or disrespect. A parent who loves their children but doesn't excuse bad behavior. A friend who supports you but won't enable your destructive patterns. These people are rare. And they're infinitely more respected than people who are nice about everything. Kind, not soft. Warm, not weak. That's the balance. Now here's the paradox that changes everything. Once you stop trying to be liked, you become more likable. Why? Because you're finally authentic. You're finally operating from integrity instead of approval seeking. You can say no. You can have boundaries. You can be yourself. And people are drawn to that. Authenticity is magnetic. The person who is constantly performing to be liked finally stops. And suddenly they have real friends instead of social contacts. They have real relationships instead of transactions. They have influence instead of popularity. This is the liberation of not needing to be liked. Stop reaching for love. Start standing in your power. And from that place, the right people will be drawn to you. Not because you're performing, but because you're real. You've now understood the internal shifts required for quiet confidence. You've learned to stop proving, to stop seeking validation, to speak with power, to ground your presence, to decide without explaining, and to value respect over likability. But all of this requires daily practice. All of this requires ritual. Chapter 7: The Daily Rituals of Quiet Confidence. You don't become quietly confident through occasional insight. You become quietly confident through daily practice. Through small choices, repeated, that rewire your nervous system and recalibrate your priorities. Most people treat their day like a response. Something happens, and they react. An email comes in, and they answer it immediately. A message arrives, and they respond right away. A demand is made, and they comply. Their entire day is built on reaction. No wonder they feel powerless. They have no agency. They're just responding to everyone else's agenda. The quiet, confident person structures their day differently. They begin before the world makes any demands. They anchor themselves. And that anchoring determines everything that follows. Your morning determines your mastery. That's the key. The quiet, confident person doesn't wake up and immediately check their phone. They don't consume content. They don't jump into other people's emergencies. They ground themselves first. Maybe it's meditation. Maybe it's exercise. Maybe it's journaling. Maybe it's just sitting with a cup of tea in silence. The specific practice matters less than the principle. For 20 to 30 minutes, before anyone else makes a claim on their time or attention, they remind their nervous system who's in charge. They remind themselves that they have agency. They prime their minds for intentional action rather than a reactive response. Think about the difference between someone who wakes up and immediately jumps into other people's agendas versus someone who takes 20 minutes to center themselves first. By 9 a.m., their presence is completely different. One person is scattered and depleted. One person is grounded and full. This isn't luxury. This is foundational. This is the practice that makes everything else possible. Now, throughout the day, the quiet, confident person practices strategic disengagement. Most people believe that availability is a virtue. They're always on. They respond to every message immediately. They're constantly available. And they wonder why they feel pulled in 1,000 directions. The quiet, confident person does something different. They silence notifications. They batch-check emails at specific times. They don't respond to every message the second it arrives. They're not constantly available. And this boundary communicates something powerful. It communicates that their time has value. It communicates that other people don't get automatic access to their attention. This isn't rudeness. This is respect for your own time. And it's contagious. When people see that you're not constantly available, they stop expecting you to be. They respect your boundaries. They plan better. They're more thoughtful in how they reach out to you. Availability is the opposite of value. That's the key. The person who responds to every text immediately seems desperate and needy. The person who responds thoughtfully and on their own schedule seems discerning. Seems like they have other priorities. Seems like someone worth talking to because they're selective about where they direct their attention. And here's what most people miss. This boundary also preserves your mental energy. When you're not constantly responding and reacting, your brain doesn't fragment. You can think deeply. You can focus. You can actually accomplish something meaningful. But the day doesn't end when you stop working. How you end your day determines how you start your tomorrow. And most people end their day in a terrible state. They go to bed anxious, regretful, carrying unresolved emotion, spiraling about conversations that didn't go the way they wanted, replaying mistakes, planning how they'll handle things differently tomorrow. And then they try to sleep. And they can't. Not really. They sleep poorly. They wake up exhausted. And they start the next day already depleted. The quiet, confident person does something different. They do what I call evening integration. Before sleep, they review their day without judgment. They acknowledge what went well, what they did right, what they learned, what they'll do differently. They process. They release. They don't ruminate. They don't spiral. They integrate. This simple practice keeps them from carrying anxiety into sleep. It allows them to actually rest. And they wake up the next morning refreshed and ready. The difference between someone who ends their day in a state of integration versus someone who ends it in a state of anxiety is the difference between waking up full and waking up empty. How you end your day determines how you start your tomorrow. Build the ritual. Master the practice. And your presence will become unshakable. These are the daily foundations of quiet confidence. But quiet confidence isn't built in isolation. It's built and tested in a relationship. It's tested in the people closest to you. And that's where everything becomes real. Chapter 8. The Quiet Confident Relationship Code. Real intimacy requires real presence. And real presence requires that you're not performing. That you're not trying to be liked. That you're not seeking validation. That you're actually there. This is where quiet confidence either breaks or becomes unshakable. This is where theory meets reality. Most relationships are built on mutual performance. Both people are trying to look good for the other. Both people are managing an impression. Both people are withholding the parts of themselves that might be rejected. And as a result, the relationship is intimate in name only. You can be physically close to someone and be completely alone. The quiet, confident person knows something different. They know that a real connection requires real presence, not performance. With the people who truly matter, the quietly confident person can fully relax. There's no performance. There's no need to prove anything. There's honesty. There's vulnerability. And there's presence. You're actually there. Not in body only, but in attention, in intention, in genuine interest. That's what creates real intimacy. Real connection requires real presence. That's the key. Think about the long-term relationships that actually work. Both people have decided they're enough. The other person is enough. There's no constant testing. No constant proving. No constant jockeying for position or approval. There's acceptance. There's security. There's the ability to just be together without performing. Compare that to the relationships where both people are still trying to impress each other, still trying to prove themselves, still managing an image. Those relationships are exhausting. You're always on, always defending, always performing. And underneath, there's anxiety because you're always worried the performance won't be good enough. The quiet, confident person breaks that cycle. They show up as themselves. They give the other person permission to do the same. And the relationship becomes real. But here's something that surprises people. Quiet confidence in relationships means having strong boundaries. It means being willing to lose a relationship rather than compromise yourself. And paradoxically, that's what makes relationships work. Boundaries are love. That's the key. The quiet, confident person is loved more because they have boundaries. They don't sacrifice themselves to appease their partner. They don't stay in situations that diminish them. They model self-respect, which teaches their partner what respect looks like. This is the greatest gift you can give someone. You show them what healthy looks like. You show them that love includes boundaries. You show them that the people who care about them don't compromise their own integrity to make the relationship work. A parent with boundaries raises children who respect themselves. A partner with boundaries teaches the other person what commitment actually means. Because it means standing firm. It means having standards. It means being willing to walk away if those standards are violated. That's love. Now, there's something else that quite confident people understand about vulnerability. Vulnerability isn't weakness. But vulnerability is selective. It's strategic. You don't trauma dump on strangers. You don't overshare with people who haven't earned your trust. You don't make yourself vulnerable to people who will weaponize it against you. That's not brave. That's naive. Vulnerability is a gift. Give it only to those who honor it. That's the key. With your inner circle, the quiet, confident person is completely open, completely vulnerable, completely honest. They've assessed these people. They've determined that these people can be trusted with their real selves. And in that context, they hold nothing back. But with everyone else, you're discerning about what you share. You're careful about who gets access to your inner world. You understand that vulnerability requires trustworthiness, and you only give that kind of access to people who've demonstrated they can handle it. This is maturity. This is wisdom. You've learned how to show up in your close relationships with presence, boundaries, and selective vulnerability. But there's one more area where quiet confidence becomes almost a superpower. It's in the economy of words. It's in how much impact you can create with how little you say. Chapter 9, The Economy of Words, Saying More by Speaking Less. One perfect sentence is more powerful than 10 mediocre ones. One meaningful word carries more weight than 1,000 explanations. The quiet, confident person has discovered the economy of words. And it changes everything. Most people believe that more is better. If you want to persuade someone, give them more reasons. If you want to communicate, talk longer. If you want to be heard, talk louder. If you want to be valued, share more of yourself. It's all backward. The quiet, confident person has trained themselves to think before they speak. Before they say anything, they ask 3 questions. Is this true? Is it necessary? Will it move this conversation forward? If the answer to any of these is no, they stay silent. You have a choice. You can fill every silence with words. Or you can choose words so carefully that everyone matters. One perfect word beats 1,000 explanations. That's the key. In a meeting, one person has 17 ideas and speaks constantly. Everyone watches. Everyone listens politely. And nobody is moved. Another person says one thing. One sentence. But they say it with such clarity and insight that the entire room stops and pays attention. Their focus sharpens. People take notes. That one sentence has more influence than the entire previous monologue. Why? Because the second person earned their words. They didn't waste them. When they speak, you know it matters. Most people are trying to convince others through volume. The quiet, confident person is trying to communicate through precision. Different games, different results. But here's something that shifts the entire dynamic. The quiet, confident person asks questions instead of making statements. Instead of saying, "I think we should do it this way," a quiet, confident person says, "What's blocking you from moving forward?" One is presentation. One is exploration. And exploration is infinitely more powerful because it shifts control to you. You're directing the conversation. You're asking the questions that open the other person. You're positioning yourself as the guide, not the competitor. Questions are more powerful than answers. That's the key. Think about a skilled therapist, a skilled negotiator, a skilled leader. They're not telling you what to do. They're asking you questions that create clarity for you. By the end of the conversation, you figured out your own answer. But they guided you there through questions. In an interview, someone asks you a tough question. The nervous candidate answers and immediately jumps back in. They elaborate. They clarify. They worry that their first answer wasn't good enough. The quiet, confident candidate answers and then stops. They wait. They let the silence do the work. That silence after your answer is incredibly powerful. Most people can't tolerate it, so they fill it. They ramble. They undermine their own credibility. The quiet, confident person doesn't. They answer, and they pause. They let the interviewer feel the weight of their answer. And in that pause, they seem thoughtful. They seem confident. They seem to be in control. The silence after truth is where power pools. But the most important aspect of the economy of words is what you decide not to say at all. Most people talk about everything. The quiet, confident person is highly selective about what they discuss. They don't gossip. They listen while others do, but they don't participate. They don't complain. They acknowledge problems and move to solutions. They don't explain themselves. They state their position and let it stand. They don't defend their choices. They own them. They don't brag. They let their results speak. Silence isn't emptiness. It's discipline. That's the key. Two people experience the exact same rejection, the same setback, the same disappointment. One person spends weeks telling everyone what happened, defending themselves, explaining why it wasn't their fault, venting, spiraling, seeking understanding and sympathy. The other person processes it, learns from it, and moves forward in silence. A year later, the quiet person has built something new. They've moved on. They've grown. They're thriving. The vocal person is still explaining, still looking for validation that they were wronged, still in the past. This is the power of omission. This is how quiet confidence speaks even in silence. You've now learned the complete framework. You understand the mindset. You understand the language. You understand the presence. You understand the words and the silences. You understand the relationships and the boundaries. And now comes the final piece. Now we talk about what you're building. We talk about the person you're becoming and the impact you're having on everyone around you. Chapter 10, Your Quiet Confidence Legacy. Everything you're learning right now isn't just about you. It's about the blueprint you're creating for everyone who watches you. It's about the standard you're setting. It's about the person you're becoming and the permission you're giving others to become themselves. This is what quiet confidence does. It doesn't just change your life. It changes everyone around you. Most people don't realize this. They think their transformation is private, that it only affects them. But it doesn't work that way. When you stop performing, everyone around you gets permission to stop performing too. When you set boundaries, people learn what healthy looks like. When you make decisions without seeking approval, people see that it's possible to trust yourself. When you speak with conviction, people remember that words have weight. You're becoming the person others follow, whether you realize it or not. That's the key. A parent models quiet confidence, and their children grow up secure. They don't need constant reassurance. They don't desperately seek approval. They develop their own internal compass because they watched someone navigate the world with integrity. They watched their parent make mistakes and not spiral. They watched their parent maintain boundaries with love. They watched their parent stay grounded even when circumstances were chaotic. And they learned. A leader embodies quiet confidence, and their team trusts implicitly. Not because the leader is nice, but because the leader is solid. They're predictable. They have principles. They stand by their word. People follow them not because they're likable, but because they're reliable. And that reliability is worth more than any charm could ever be. A friend finally stops performing, and suddenly they become the person everyone wants to be close to. Not because they got better at being social, but because they became real. They stopped trying to fit in. They stopped managing their image. They became themselves. And people are drawn to authenticity the way moths are drawn to light. Your presence becomes a gift to those around you. But here's what most people don't understand about building quiet confidence. It doesn't happen overnight. It's built through thousands of small choices. Thousands of moments where you choose restraint over reaction, where you choose breath over panic, where you choose decision over explanation, where you choose listening over talking, where you choose presence over performance. These choices compound. In 3 months, people notice a shift. Something has changed about you. You're different. They can't quite put their finger on it, but they notice. In a year, it's undeniable. Your presence has shifted. Your relationships have deepened. Your capability has expanded. Your influence has grown. In 5 years, you're unrecognizable. Not because you changed your personality, but because you finally aligned your outside with your inside. Small daily choices become your signature over time. That's the key. Someone commits to these principles, and after a year, people are asking, "What happened to you?" And the honest answer is simple. Nothing happened to you. You finally happened to yourself. You became the person you've always been underneath all the performing and proving and seeking and explaining. The person who was always there, just waiting. Now comes the moment where all of this becomes real for you. All of this learning, all of this insight, all of this understanding becomes a decision. Because knowledge without action is just entertainment. You have the code now. You know what quiet confidence is. You know how it's built. You know what it requires. You've seen the examples. You've felt the truth of it resonating inside you. I know you have, because truth resonates. It doesn't need to be convinced. It recognizes itself. So the question isn't whether this works. The question is whether you're willing to do the work. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to feel the pull to go back to performing. That's normal. That's the old code competing with the new one. You'll be in a situation where the old response would have been to over-explain or seek approval or fill the silence. And in that moment, you'll have a choice. You can go back to what's familiar. Or you can choose again. You can pause. You can breathe. You can stand in your own certainty. That single choice, repeated over and over, is how quiet confidence becomes who you are instead of what you do. The only thing between you and your quiet confidence is the decision to stop proving you deserve it. You already deserve it. You already are enough. You've always been enough. The whole journey is just getting out of your own way so that what's already there can finally be seen. So here's the challenge. Here's the actual work. For the next 30 days, implement one thing. Just one. Choose the practice that called to you the most. The morning anchoring. The pause before you speak. The boundary you've been avoiding. The explanation you're going to stop making. The silence you're going to protect. Make one choice. Every single day. For 30 days. And then pay attention. Pay attention to how people respond to you differently. Pay attention to how you feel differently. Pay attention to your own presence. Pay attention to the shift. It will be there. Because quiet confidence isn't something you're creating. It's something you're uncovering. This is your moment. This is the decision point. And only you can make it. The quiet confidence code is now yours. What you do with it is up to you. Go and become the person whose presence changes the energy of every room you enter. Not through noise. Through stillness. Not through performing. Through being. This is the quiet confidence code. And it's waiting for you to live it. You've heard it all now. The quiet confidence code isn't complicated. It's not about being cold or aloof or inhuman. It's about making a decision. You will stop performing and start being. You will stop seeking validation and start creating it. You will stop explaining and start deciding. You will stop filling silence and start commanding it. You will stop trying to be liked and start being respected. You will stop reacting and start leading. This isn't about being loud. The loudest person in the room is always the weakest. This is about being so grounded, so clear, so certain of who you are that you don't need to announce it. Here's what happens next. You're going to face a choice. You're going to feel the pull to go back to performing, back to seeking, back to explaining. That's normal. That's the old code competing with the new one. You'll notice it. You'll pause. You'll breathe. And you'll choose again. In 3 months, people will start treating you differently. In a year, your life will be unrecognizable. Not because the world changed, but because you finally did. The quiet confidence code is now yours. The question is, will you live it? You'll move.